see. Oh, when my heart is troubled, Lord, just comfort me.
It is indeed a blessing to once again be assembled here in the house of the Lord with another opportunity to study a portion of his holy and divine word. As always, it's indeed our prayer. Hopefully something is said this morning that you'll find to be beneficial and thereby be able to apply to your life and be a better Christian and a better person in the future. Certainly our heart continues to go out to those who are mourning the loss of loved ones. We want to continue to remember them in our prayers. Thank you. We want to continue to remember them in our prayers, as well as those that are going through various medical procedures and medical treatments. We want to continue to pray for them. And then we certainly want to remember all those that are sick and shut in. And if the opportunity presents itself throughout the week where you might be able to go by and visit with them, whether you can give them a call and offer any words of encouragement, I'm certainly be glad to hear from you. And certainly God has continued to bless us as we look at the world around us and seeing all the numerous things going on, all the different protests and the fighting and all the different upheaval that are taking place. And even right here in our little old city here in Shreveport, where we see young men are still being injured, injuring one another. So we certainly want to continue to remember that and remember all those in our prayers just as well. And hopefully God would bless us, that our nation can find its way and that our little old city can get back to being the peaceful, loving city that it once was, to the extent that it was peaceful. All right? Now, we're having our last lesson, our last topic on the love letters from above. But today's subject is what? The charge to be in charge. We begin in the book of 3 John, the 11th. We're going to be looking at verses 11 through verses 15 this morning. And we'd like to choose this morning for our memory verse. One we want to commit to memory is, beloved, it is a faithful thing you do in all your efforts for these brothers and strangers as they are. John 3 and verse 5. A faithful thing you do. Didn't make any changes to our lesson here, our graph, but we just wanted to remind you of what we discussed a little bit in terms of love letters, the significance of them, and the fact that while God is continually writing to us love letters from above, we're also expected to, as members of the body, to write love letters back to him. And so we need to work on our letters. We know God is doing his job. We need to be willing to do ours. Now let's get on into the lesson. So the charge to be in charge. Verses 11 through verses 15, it reads, Beloved, do not imitate evil, but imitate good. Whoever does good is from God, and whoever does evil has not seen God. Demetrius has received a good testimony from everyone and from the truth itself. We also add our testimony, and you know that our testimony is true. I had much to write to you, but I would rather not write with pen and ink. I hope to see you soon, and we'll talk face to face. Peace be to you. The friends greet you, and greet the friends each by name. Now, one of the things I really wanted to share with you before we get on and listen on that, what I liked and I thought about as I was reading that last part when John says there's come a time when you stop writing, but you want to see one face to face. And so we should think there's going to be a time where we want to stop writing back to God, but we want to see him face to face. Oh, what a time will that be when we can see him. But now let's get into the lesson. So first, when you think of charge, and the subject is the charge of being in charge, you think of, that's not a new term. It's rather an old term, because when we think of a charge, we think of being charged with a crime, or we think of charging something with our credit card. But that's not the charge we're talking about here. What we're talking about in Bible context, and I went and got a definition for us, it implies a divine, constant, compelling, lifetime command to all ministers, leaders, workers, disciples, pilgrims, and sons and daughters of the Lord to continue in sound doctrine of the Word of God. A charge is a duty and a responsibility that must be obeyed. Can we agree with that? And so we see that a charge is not something that is lightly, but it's something that's what? It's divine in nature, right? It's a duty. It's something that should be constant. It's something that should be what? It should be continual. In fact, it's to continue. We are commanded to continue in sound doctrine for what? For a lifetime. So it's not something that you do and you get past. And it's not something where you go and you reach retirement. It's something that you continually do, and you do it for a lifetime. Now, we see some Bible examples of a charge. We see here in 1 Kings, the 2nd chapter, verses 3 and verses 4, where David, he was nearing his death. And he gave his son Solomon a charge. Listen to what David said. He says, and keep the charge of the Lord your God, walking in his ways and keeping his statutes, his commandments, his rules, and his testimonies, as it is written in the law of Moses, that you may prosper in all that you do. All that you do and wherever you turn, that the Lord may establish his word that he spoke concerning me, saying, if your sons pay close attention to their way and to walk before me in faithfulness with all their heart and with all their soul, ye shall not lack a man on the throne of Israel. You see David was given what? He was passing on responsibilities here to his son, right? And he gave him a charge, and he told him what he must do in the eyes of the Lord. We have, and later we get into some more things on that. Then we see Apostle Paul again here in the New Testament, giving his son Timothy a charge. He says to Timothy in 2 Timothy, the 4th chapter, verses 1 and 2, he says to him, I charge you in the presence of God and of Christ Jesus, who is to judge the living and the dead, and by his appearing and his kingdom, preach the word, be ready in season and out of season, reprove, rebuke, and exhort with all complete patience and teaching. And then he goes on to tell him, he said, because a time will come when they will what? Not endure sound doctrine, but have itching ears, right? And so Paul here has given Timothy a charge. And so we see that during that time, they were familiar with charging someone. It wasn't like we do today, but they were familiar with it. In fact, old folks used to sing a song, a charge to keep I had. You see, many of us don't understand or don't recall that, and some of those songs had a lot of meaning to them. And because it gave us a lot of what? It gave us a lot of information on what God expected of us. You see, because remember now, a charge is what? It's a duty and a responsibility. What you say, Brother Snow? It's a command, right? It's given as a command, but it's a command that one must what? You must carry it out and must undertake, and it's what? It must be a solemn or if it in its intent. And so we see here that they were familiar with giving charges at that time. In fact, as Christians, we're being given a charge. Now let me stop right here for a second, because I do want to ask you this question that I have up there. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. But oftentimes when we think, the other term we think, when we think about, as our lesson suggests, is not receiving a charge, but being in charge. Now, we don't necessarily want to receive a charge, but we definitely want to be in charge. All right, keep that in mind. As we go through, thank you, Mike, and all that about you. So, as Christians, what is our charge? To seek and save the lost. That might be on our name. So, one of our charges is to seek and save the lost. What else would you consider to be our charge as Christians? Gary? Go ye to all the world. All right. What else would you consider to be a charge? To live your life so others may see Christ in you? Anyone else? Now, let me stop you just for a second to make sure you understand. And I got some music folks, so they get it. Y'all figure out how to get it wrong. But as I understand, when you join the military, they give you some general commands. And as a soldier, you're supposed to know those general commands so that you do what? You always follow them, you always carry them out, right? Now, one of the general commands is about being at your post. What military people in? Is that right? Y'all got military command about being at your post? And what happens when you're at your post? Huh? You get punished, right? Because it's a great responsibility to stay at your post, right? And you can't leave your post until you have been relieved of the duty, right? So now, but now I can hold you as a soldier responsible if you don't know those commands. So the first thing I have to do as a leader is to get you to know those commands. And now, y'all hear me if I'm wrong. Now, I want y'all military folks speak out now. So there's time that the commander or somebody might call you up and question you and ask you about a command. He might say, what is General Order number 7? Is that right? Do they do that? Huh? And you have to do what? Well, how come it is in Christian when we talk about our commands, as Brother Snow put it, when we talk about our charge, why is it that we don't sit here and we can't simply recite them out? We look at each other like we tongue-tied, like the old folks used to say. But let me give you some help on some of it. So since you're acting like you don't know what they are. Well, that jumped ahead. I don't know what that did. I hope this thing ain't messing me up. Wow. I got something out of order here. There we go. One duty we have is to be humble. Maybe that's why we don't have so many humble Christians. Because y'all looking like y'all hadn't heard that duty. But Apostle Paul says that we got to have the same mind that Christ had. Philippians 2:1 through 11, he reads over there and talk about us being humble. And then Christ, the Bible says that in Romans, Paul tells us, he said that when Christ came down, when he found himself in the fashion of a man, that he did what? Even though he was God, he humbled himself. And so one of our charges as Christians is to be what? Humble. I'm not going to give you a number on it, so you don't have to remember. I ain't going to say that's general rule number 1. But when somebody asks you what is one of the responsibilities of one of your charges, you ought to be able to say it's to be humble, right? So we need to be forever working on that and getting better at being humble, right? Another charge we would have is to be a servant. servanthood. Jesus himself says in John 13, you know, and this servanthood and being in charge is not anything new. Because, in fact, the apostles or the disciples at the time, they got into some discussions with Jesus about who was going to be in charge. Some of them even went to him and said, and I think it was one woman went to him and said, let my sons sit on right side and one on the left side. They wanted to be in charge. People always had a thing about being in charge. But Jesus says a servant is not greater than his master. And what example in John the 13th chapter had he given them? He washed their feet. And so he was saying to them, or he showed us, he says, if I'm being your master, he said, you call me master, teacher, and Lord. And if I see what needs to be done, and I go and do it, or if I'm the one here washing your feet, it shouldn't be anything for you to wash one another's feet. But if we're honest with ourselves and we're truthful with ourselves, we struggle with washing somebody else's feet. And I know some of us, and some people they take that so literal, they think that, oh, if I just go get a bucket of water, a pail of water, and I sit down and I wash somebody's feet, I'm doing. But Jesus wasn't talking about you actually doing no foot washing. Nothing wrong with that. That's good. If somebody's feet need washing, you can do it. There's nothing wrong with it. But he was talking about our attitude and our behavior in terms of how we what? We treat one another. We interact with one another. Yes, ma'am. You got to be a servant to know. That's right. You first have to do that, right? And so that's what he expects of us. So one of our charges is to be servants. Okay? Hospitality. Paul says that we should have a reputation of good works. I liked that when I was studying this and I was looking at this, I really like how Paul put this. And right quickly, it made me come to another question and say, y'all know me, so what was my question? What was my question? Y'all know me. What was my question? What question did I come up with? Huh? What question did I come up with when I read that? Come on, y'all. Huh? Am I hospitable? But what he say after that? When we use hospitality is the phrase, but the example there is my reputation. What type of reputation do we have? Are we noticed? Are we known for being hospitable? What type of good works do we display? What good works if I'm known for? Now let me help you with that so you can get what I'm going with some of this. And I'm gonna use me as an example because I don't want to call out any of you. You just insert yourself in there. If you're someone else that knows me, either in the body but especially outside the body, you say, "Do you know Henry Brown?" They'll say, "Yeah, I know Henry Brown," and they'll tell you one or two things they know about me. They'll say, "I know he used to work at the electric company," or they say, "I know he plays golf." That would be my reputation. Y'all looking at me strange. Now, why would they know those two things about me? Y'all not answering these questions. Why would you think? Huh? When they would see me, they would see me doing those what? One of those two things. I either be at work or on the golf course. They would know that. In fact, there was a time, Brother Dansby, because you brought this up a long time ago, but there was a time that no matter where I went, whether I was in my own personal car or I was in my company vehicle, if you saw me, if you look in the trunk, what's the rest of that, y'all? Oh, y'all ain't working with me. If you look in the trunk, you will find my golf clubs, right? They was going to be there. I wasn't traveling without them. But Brother Dan brought this up once before, but there was a time when I was noted for carrying my Bible. And if you saw me at work or saw me anywhere, I was always toting the Bible. Somewhere along the way, I put the Bible and started toting it. That's my story. You can judge me all you want. But what I want you to do today is to put yourself in that story. What is your reputation? What would others say about you? What good works are you noted for? Yes, ma'am. See that? They said I was a good man. That's all right. I like that. You need to tell me who that is so I give him $20. By others. And that's what that's why we're going through this, because that's what John's getting to. We're going to get to that in a minute, but I want you to build this up so you can see some things here. And so we see now another charge we were given it by Paul in Ephesians. He told us we should be tender-hearted. We should be what? Forgiving of one another. Jesus also taught us about forgiving one another. So one of the things that should be in our reputation, we should be known for forgiving. We should be known for it. That's a charge we have. Brother Dan, you have something? That's so true. And we're going to get to that. Y'all keep that in mind, what he just said, because we're going to get to that a little bit, because we see in this story some individuals who have some issues, right? But I wanted us to know, so you wouldn't say you left out this Bible class and I know what you was charged with. So as Christians, we are charged with these things. And as Brother Snow has said, he said these are commands. All right? Faithfulness. Jesus says that in Matthew, the 25th chapter, verses 21 and verses 23, you go there and read that, he tells the story, and we're not going to go into the story, but he said, because you was faithful over little, I'm going to make you rule over what? You see, a lot of times we want to do the little things, but we want to be in charge of the big things. But the little things are important. And God is looking at how we handle the little things. That's something we need to remember as Christians. See, we coming to worship service and doing the worship service is a big thing. But what Vince trying to get us to understand, there's some little things you're supposed to do all week long. We don't do the little things, and therefore we ain't ready for the. This is what Gary is talking about a minute ago. Some of you said fruitfulness. Look at how Jesus says it here. He says in Luke the 6th chapter, verses 43 through 45, he says, for no good tree bears bad fruit. So we are charged with, or we are expected to bear good fruit. First of all, we're expected to what? To be fruitful. That means you got to have some what? And then somewhere in there he says, a tree is known by the fruit it bears. Now, if you ain't bearing no fruit, I think Brother Vince preached something on that the other day, didn't he? Something about the vine. He said something about you got to what? It ain't good for nothing but to be what? Put in the fire. I mean, y'all help me now. He didn't preach that? Did I just dream of that? Okay, well, that's what I thought. I thought I heard him say that. And so we have a charge to be fruitful. And so we need to now what I know again, and Linda got, when she left out, I wish she stayed there because I need her help on this because I'm not really good, but some of you all do this, so you probably help me with this. But I know I don't have any fruit trees, but I have some plants, and I have some little trees. And I know that in order for they seem to do good when I work around them and clean out the weeds and stuff around them, Brother Dansby. And then when I go in and I cut off some of the branches and prune them up, then the next year, especially the next year, they come back and they just look. And I say, wow, it took some work. So I had to do some stuff around it, right? Well, if that works on a tree and the plants for them to be fruitful, then if I'm to be fruitful as a Christian, do I need to be doing some pruning and some weeding around my soul? Huh? Don't I have to do some things? So why is it then we just think that all we have to do is obey the gospel and that's it? We done. It's over. Just sit there. Let it happen. But then what he says there, now, here's a question I had to come up with, because we're talking about being in charge, or the charge to be in charge. Somebody help me answer this question. How or where do we get our charge? From God's word? Let me ask you this then. Where did the Apostle John, since we're reading John, where did he get his charge? He got it from Jesus, right? Let me ask you this question. So y'all making it hard, so I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to the military. Y'all know something about military stuff. Thank you. There got to be somebody in charge to give you a charge. I read to you earlier, David, who was the king, he gave his son, Solomon, a what? A charge. Why could he give him one? Because he was king. Could anybody in the court, or anybody, I mean not in the court, but can anybody in the kingdom give Solomon a charge? No. It had to be David. We just read a minute ago, Paul gave Timothy a charge. Who was Paul? He was an apostle. He was instructed or entrusted by Jesus. So he was given authority by Jesus, and he passed along the authority to who? To Timothy. What did he tell Timothy? I charge you to do what? Preach the word. And to do what? For the time will come. Did he not say that? Right? And so he gave him a charge. And so the reason I want you to say that, I want you to see that is because to be in charge, you have to get that authority from someone that's in charge. It's important to understand that. So let's look at this, because we won't get to what Brother Jones was talking. We want to back up and look at some things from last week's lesson. In verses 9 and verses 10, we see, I have written something, this is John, to the church. Why did you do that, John? Because I was authorized by Jesus. I was given the responsibility from God. So what I'm doing, I'm writing some things to you. Why? Because there's some things going on that are not consistent with what God would have you to do. He said, but Diotrephes, who likes to put himself first, does not acknowledge our authority. You see, sometimes you can be in charge, and then there's those others who what? Think they're in charge, or they don't recognize your authority. Many of us have dealt with that in some form or fashion, whether you're in the military, whether you're on a job, whether you're in church. There's going to always be somebody who's going to do what? Rebel to show you. It's a good word. And so this Diotrephes, now we don't know. Now some things we don't know. I'm assuming some things because of some things can be said. I don't know. We don't know that Diotrephes. We know he wasn't an apostle. So he had no authority to overrule John. So we know he wasn't an apostle. He very well could have been an elder at the local church. We don't know that because the Bible doesn't tell us. He could have been a leading brother. We don't know. He could have been someone that was a what? A high contributor. We don't know. But what we do know, that he had some authority that he assumed from somewhere. But whatever authority he had, it didn't usurp or overrule the authority that John had. That's what we know. And we know that because watch what he does. So if I come, I will bring up what he is doing. So there's some things he's doing. He ain't giving us all of it. But talking wicked nonsense against us. So he's what? He's putting down leadership. Right? So the first clue should be to you when you're looking at something, you need to identify who's in charge. And then once you identify who's in charge, then you need to see if this person that you're talking to, whether or not they are putting down leadership. They don't. Now, let me back up. They might not agree. That don't mean you have to agree, but you should never be putting down the person you don't agree with. That's when you're attacking that person. That's what it's talking about. And in today's environment, we see a lot of that. We see where people, they don't talk about whatever it is, the issue you're talking about. They talk about the individual. In fact, that's some of the problem that you have or you face if you go out and you try to present Christ in the world. You get a person, you get to tell them about the truth, and you tell them about the church, then they want to start talking about you. That's why it's so important that you try to keep yourself in good condition. Because once they start pricking them, they want to look at you. If you don't believe me, go visit a Christian that hadn't been here in a while and start telling them that it's wrong for them to forsake the assembly, and then see what they say to you. See if they start quoting Bible, chapter, scripture, and verse. Or if they don't start talking about what you ain't. Or what somebody else ain't. Right? But let's go on to look at this guy a little bit, but then we're talking about it. So he says here, he says now, and not content with that, he refuses to welcome the brothers. Now you remember now, we said a charge we had was to be what? Hospitable. But now this guy doesn't welcome anybody. And I know that he doesn't welcome him. You go ahead.
The same way it is today in many churches. You don't see anybody else, according to this writing, you don't see anybody else rising up against this dictator.
Nobody says anything. He just continues to do what he's doing. Why? And you can see why. This guy's a tough guy. Because not only does he not welcome anybody, but he won't let you invite anybody. They can only come at his approval. And then, not only that, if you attempt to do it, he gonna put you out. And so this guy was a tough guy. In fact, we can ask the question, what motivated Diotrephes' behavior? So we really don't know why he's acting the way he is, but we do know what she just said. We do know that he's selfish. We don't know what prompted him to be that way. We don't know what causes him to do that, but we know how he is behind his behavior. We know also that he's prideful, and we know that he's arrogant. So there's three things that you need to watch out for when you're looking for people that act and respond as Diotrephes. And something else we know about is Brother Dennis was talking about. They have a self-serving mentality. What it means to have a self-serving mentality. They only do it when it's going to benefit them. I'm in charge. Sometimes being in charge, you don't tell nobody anything. You're just in charge. You just in charge. Everybody just do whatever it is they want to do. And then they say, who's in charge? I'm in charge. But then you take no what? You take no responsibility. Well, why did that happen? I don't know. But I'm in charge. Because being in charge comes with what? Responsibility. And so we should look here and we can see something. John is showing his charge because he is recognizing a problem, and because he is responsible, he is writing to address that problem, which is showing his authority, and he's reminding them of where he gets his authority from. But not only that, he's saying that because I'm responsible, I'm coming to see you face to face. You see, sometimes those that are in charge have to get what? You have to get face to face with the problem. Too often we have people that want to work on something from afar. They don't want to get down and get the details. And see, remember now, see, y'all, I know y'all forgot this from last week, because I know we don't hold on to things, but you remember in the last week lesson we talked about, you see what Diotrephes is doing here is one of the signs of fracturing the church. And if you notice those things that we were charged with, all those things are aligned at unifying the body. Jesus prayed in John the 17th chapter that we might be one. And you remember, I want you to show you something here. Just watch this thing. You remember that on the day of but when Jesus got ready to go to the cross, his Father had designed how he would die. Jesus wasn't looking forward to that. He didn't want, but he said, nevertheless, I'm going to do it the way you want. That's not how I would do it. That's me. Jesus didn't say, I'm saying that. Y'all going to have a problem with that. I'm saying it. I'm paraphrasing. That's in it. Now, I know I got to die. I was prepared to make, but that's not how I would do it. But nevertheless, you see, that's what you do when you're the servant, when you have humbled yourself, and when you are working to keep unity. Oh, no doubt. In fact, no doubt, John didn't teed him off, because John tells us what? He told us early on, he says, now what? He says, now that Gatius, however you want to pronounce his name, huh? Okay, what did he say about Gaius? What did he say? He said, I pray your soul is well. As your what? No, he said, I pray your health is well, as your soul is. He said, because I've heard some things about you. I'm paraphrasing for y'all. Y'all go back and read it again if you want to. He said, but I heard some things about you. And I've been told about how you invite strangers in. And you take care of them, and you send them on their way in good standing. I hear how I heard about what you're doing. You are doing it even in the face of this guy here. He doesn't scare you like the rest of them. But everybody else is falling in line.
And he said, this is how we're going to do it. And I may not have agreed with him, but I said, guess what? This is what we're going to do because he said do it.
Right.
Now, what I need you to do, I need you to come up with another way to do this. But right now, we're going to do it his way. I don't mind you saying this is not the way we're going to give me an option so I can give him an option. But what we do is, I don't like it. I wouldn't do it that way. Therefore, it is wrong. And not only do I think it's wrong, I'm going to get in the ear of some other folks and let them know this is not the way to do it. So it's turned in from not the way I want to do it. Now it's turned into it's wrong and it needs to be done this way. Okay. And that overflows into a lot of different areas.
So now, I'm glad you brought it up because my son and I were having a conversation yesterday. And I'm going to share something I shared with him, with you all. Because I had similar issues with you talking about. And this is where I got my example from. I had a supervisor many years ago that when he would come in, and his boss name, when I use his name, I know it's on the thing, his name was Chester Remedies. And when he came in, and if he says, Mr. Remedies said, that meant whatever he's telling you to do, that he got that from Mr. Remedies, and I'm not going to be checking up on you if you do it or don't do it. But if he came in and he said, Chess said, same person, that means I gave him an advice or suggestion. He accepted my suggestion, so you better do it because I'm going to be watching to see if you do it. Now, I said that to say this. Oftentimes, people get into that, what you just said, and all that discussion. But the reality of it is, for an example, when I worked at SWEPCO, which is AEP, my employees would come in and they say all these things about AEP and AEP management, upper management, as they would put it. I would like for them to put the term upper management because they give me the way to say, well, they wasn't talking about me. But then I realized, I asked the question, well, who is AEP? How often do they meet with the CEO? They don't ever meet with the CEO. How often do they meet with the president? Very seldom do they see the president. How often do they meet with the manager and the director? Well, they see us all the time. So I came back and said, well, who is AEP? I'm AEP. So when my president gives me a command, I don't go in and say the president said or whatever. They go in, I accept what he said. I give the president my feedback. I give him the feedback. If he says, I hear what you're saying, but here's what we're going to do. Got it? I walk out and I tell him, this is what we're going to do. It came from me. You got a problem with it? You got a problem with me. Now, I want to bring that back. I know y'all said, what that got to do with church? If God has given a command, And he gives it to the preacher, the elder, or the deacon. They got it. They supposed to come out and supposed to give it to you. They ain't supposed to tell you, I got that from. That come from you. And I'm supposed to hold you accountable for that. Because guess what? I know y'all ain't going to see it, but God is holding me accountable. See, we talking about being in charge. I know y'all don't like that, but you see, because being in charge carries responsibilities. And responsibilities is akin to, first cousin of, accountability.
It carries a great responsibility. You may not see it that way. You might want to be delegating it, but it all still comes back to you. And God's going to hold you accountable for what does not get done.
So when the president told me, here's what I want done, I went to my employees and I said, here's what we're going to do. And if the employees didn't do it, guess what happened? Huh? I'm going to get it done. I'm going to get it done. Now, I might not get it done with you. I might need to go get some other employees. And I may be out there doing it myself. But I'm not going back to the president and say, it didn't get done. I like somebody say, they wouldn't do it. No. Because I was what? I was in charge. It was my responsibility to get it done. Now you touching it, brother. He got to give an account, right? He can't say, well, no. You got to account for that. It meant that you had to be on your what? You had to be on your post. You had to be on your job. You see, what we forget to fail to understand sometimes, a lot of the commands and a lot of the things that people put in place, it comes from the Bible. God already set it up. They just go in there and get it and use it in another thing. And then we accept it over there. You know why? Because we get a paycheck every week or every 2 weeks. He's working on himself, right? Because he says, I'm responsible for, first and foremost, me, right? And see, that's what we got to understand as Christians. God is holding us, whether we understand it or not, responsible. We're accountable. Not only are we accountable for ourselves, but you know what, Brother Danby? We ain't on here. We're accountable for those people around us. We can sit here and say, well, you know, I'm a Christian and I'm living my life right, and the fact that Shreveport is going, it ain't my responsibility. I'm concerned if God's going to ask us about something. What did y'all do? What pruning did y'all do? I'm going to put it in plain English. Who did you go tell? Who did you talk to? Where did you spread the gospel? Well, they wouldn't hear it. Did you tell them? In fact, I heard a preacher once say, I don't know if it's true or not, but they say, I believe it was Noah. And he said he preached for how many years? 120 years. And he only saved 8 souls. But he condemned the whole world. Y'all get that? He preached the same gospel that he had, and it only saved 8 souls. But that same gospel condemned the whole world. So God is expecting you to go out and plant his word. He's got the job to do. That's all you got to do. That's why Paul says, I plant and Apollos water. But it was God that gave the increase. We trying to get into God's business. You ain't doing your job. And then here's what's scary, y'all. I got to say this before, and I got a couple more slides to get out of here. Here's what's scary. You heard me talk about the job. You see, the employees, the value of, because I've been both, when you're a direct contributor, you're an employee, you work 8 hours and you go home. You do. But once they make you supervisor, you don't work an 8-hour day. They may only pay you for 8 hours, but you're working many more hours than that because you can't put it down. Somebody asked me, say, Brother Brown, what did they got to do with the gospel? Why don't you ask me some questions sometime, y'all? So I'm going to answer this since y'all won't ask it. It's when you take a responsibility or a role in the body of Christ. Watch out, preachers. Watch out, elders. Watch out, deacons. Look out, Bible class teachers. God is expecting more out of you. Well, Brother Brown, I can't do no more. Well, you need to get out the road. I don't know how else to tell y'all, because if you're in the role, he's going to hold you accountable. Now, I'm going to say this. I'm finna sit down with this. I got one other slide. I'm going to sit down with. I'm going to say this because I know I'm finna get in trouble here. But you remember when Jethro, I think it was, talking to his son-in-law Moses. Was it Jethro talking to him? He said what? You taking on too much. He said, get you some other men. Now, what did he tell him, Kevin? You know what he said. Nobody else won't talk to me. You tell me what he said. Take care of the smaller matters, right? Then he said, you take some and put them over 100, some and put them over 50, some and put them over 10, right? So now, if you got your 10, and you ain't seen after your 10, I'm finna stop with this thing, y'all. He says, beloved, do not imitate evil. Notice now what he starts with. He says, beloved, do not imitate. What does that mean? Evil. Why is it so? I noticed this. Y'all help me if I'm wrong. Y'all tell me something. I ain't got no problem. You ain't gonna hurt my feelings. I noticed that from a small child, it's something about doing bad things that they take on so easy. You always have to run around behind them and say, don't do that. Now, I'm going to infer something here. You ain't going to find it in the Bible, but I'm going to infer it here just in this chapter. You see, I believe, I don't know to be a fact, but I believe there was more Christians there that was copying the behavior of Diotrephes, and very few people were doing what Gatius was doing. That's why it came to his attention. You got a whole lot of Diotrephes-ites going on, and just a few Gatius. And if I was to extrapolate that out, and the author kind of suggests this, that's the problem we fight with in the churches all over, is that too often we have too many Diotrephes, and there are not enough Gatius. Folks that love to be in charge, but don't want to do nothing. Did I say that, y'all? Did that come out? I was thinking that. Did it come out? I might not have should have said. I apologize. Did it come out? I was thinking that, and how did it came out? I better move on, cause man. wait a minute. What am I doing wrong here? I done messed the thing up. I done cut it off. I done messed it up. But anyways, I take my seat because I'm really messing up in there. It's time for me to sit down. But again, I want to end with, seriously, I want to end with us looking and taking a self-assessment. And I'm telling you, that includes me. And asking myself, who do I more emulate? Am I imitating goodness and good works? Or I'm leaning over here. Maybe not all the way over there, but I'm leaning strong towards the Diotrephes guy. And my reputation is one where I'm seldom found doing good works. If that's the case, I'm going to beg you, just like John is that you take an assessment of yourself, take a different look at yourself, and move more to doing good works. Start imitating good. So when you look at Brother Dansby, for an example, you might pick out and you may have in your mind that there's some bad things or some evil things that he do. I'm going to ask you to take a second look at Brother Dansby and to say, is there some good things that he does? And if you say, yeah, I found some good things that he do them. That's all I'm going to ask you to do. Do them. Brother God.